Chapter 28, Magic Lantern, Part 2. Eventually, the orange ball of the sun dipped below the western ridge, and Chestnut, weary of weaving pine needle baskets, began pulling pots and pans out of the cupboard onto the floor. The music fell apart. Bearclaw set down his guitar and scratched his beard. "I guess we should go out there," he said. "It is Cornfest." "Oh, Cornfest," sighed Ant. "It isn't the same without the silo." "Well, anyhow, we have to eat. No point cooking supper with all that cow meat going around. Besides, tonight we're playing electric." Out in the meadow, the crowd was growing more boisterous. Several spirals of dancers had formed, and another line was weaving in and out among them. Without a shared center, each group was singing a different song, and the result was cacophony, bordering on chaos. Some of the stalls had been knocked over, their wares scattered on the ground. The four musicians wove their way through the crowd. Ant carried Chestnut in her arms. They elbowed through the rowdy gathering at the log house door, where the harried scullery workers were busy dishing up the meat and pouring out the beer. On the platform, some musicians were already performing, if you could call them musicians. They had no instruments. They were old men pounding out rhythms on kettles and buckets and tunelessly warbling the words to a song about a young girl who gets stuck upside down in a tree with her petticoats falling down above her head. Nearby, a few people were stomping their feet and clapping their hands to no particular rhythm. Across the room, Johnny caught sight of Frankie sitting at the very same table where they had found him that morning. He had slept. He was upright and clear-eyed. There was a stein of beer and a plate of meat before him. Their eyes met, and Frankie nodded, but Bearclaw looked down. "I've had enough of that old doctor for one day," he said. "Let's go see what those fools are up to on the platform." The fools on the platform were not from King Corn. They were farmers by their uniforms, but one wore the three-cornered hat of a tent maker, and another had his overalls on backwards. Evidently, they did not recognize the approaching musicians. "Her feet were pink and her knees were red," sang the man in the three-cornered hat. "Her bum was as bald as a baker's head," sang the man in the backwards overalls. "You boys shut up," hollered a voice from the crowd. "Show some respect for the ladies." Some people started to boo. Some started to cheer. Someone said, "No, look, here's the real musicians. Show some respect for the real musicians." There was stomping and clapping. Johnny felt several palms slapping his back. "Bearclaw, where's your guitar? We want some real music." "On the stage, Tucker. Come on out. We're going to play electric." "Johnny Arcane," yelled several men at once, and behind them a chorus of women and children sang, "He climbed sunbeams and he held on to the birds." Chestnut picked up her head and laughed. "Where you boys from?" asked Bearclaw. "We be from Sputum," said the man in the three-cornered hat. "Sputum? That's a long way to walk, just for a Cornfest." We didn't walk. We came on a cyclable. Cyclable? What's a cyclable? It's a new thing. They makes them in Stubblefield. Got wheels and chains. The man in the backward overalls leaned forward. Hell, you watch. Next fest, we be flying into Corn Fest on the back of a sky pig. A scullery man came around with a tray full of meat and steins of ale. The musicians settled down at a table near the platform. You boys keep on singing, said Bearclaw. We like to hear what they sing about in Sputum. The man in the three-cornered hat spread his arms wide and sang. She shook her arms and she cleared her throat. The backwards overalls replied, Up jumped the fat little man in the boat. A round of sloppy laughter rolled from the other side of the long hall, and then a sound like porcelain tiles slapping on a tabletop. Very few people were sitting at the tables, although the room was crowded to overflowing. A restlessness pervaded. In the din, there were more proclamations than conversations. Men touched men, backslaps, handshakes, a punch on the shoulder, while women evaded the touch of men and children scampered about underfoot. There seemed to be a great anticipation of something about to happen. But Frankie sat, stone still and resolute, his eyes fixed on the musicians at the table by the platform, where the fools from Sputum continued to reel out their vulgarities. He had been alone at first, but now Marta, the scullery maid, was with him. From time to time he leaned over and whispered something in her ear. He wants something from you, Johnny, said Bearclaw. What do you suppose it is? I don't know. Someone threw an apple core. It landed at the feet of the backward overall man, and he kicked it back into the crowd. From the scullery there was a metallic crash, and a woman let out an oath. Then Marta detached herself from Frankie's side and began weaving her way through the crowd toward the platform. She seemed awkward and shy, like she was uncertain of the message she was bringing. She stood by the table. Johnny, Frankie wants you to fetch him his crutches from out of Jocko's room. There was a moment of silence. Jocko blinked and shook back his head. What was Frankie doing in my room? Another moment of silence. Bearclaw spoke. Marta, you got two good strong legs. Can't you fetch Frankie's crutches for yourself? Marta stammered. He wants Johnny. A tremor fluttered in Johnny's heart, like a wavelength passing through. There was more here than meets the eye. He stood up. His legs were shaky. I'll go. Immediately, Marta sat down in Johnny's chair and laid her head on the tablecloth. Jocko reached out and touched her hair. Johnny turned and started into the crowd. A group of drunken men had formed a chain with their elbows locked, and they were swaying back and forth. Johnny had to make a long circle around them. Someone had spilled a bowl of beef stew on the floor, and children were running and skidding through it. A dog was barking continuously. 2 girls were playing patty cake with their palms and chanting rhythmically, "Climb the sunbeams, hold on to the birds." As Johnny passed the hearth, a skein of flame burst out of the embers with a roar, as if saying hello. He felt the waves of heat pass through him. He felt the sound of the voices around him passing through his head like waves. He felt the tide of his own blood rushing through his body. Waves. Everything was made of waves. His face flushed. He thought he might fall. He shoved himself into Jocko's room and slammed the door behind him. Quiet, still, and cool. He stood for as long as it took for his heartbeat to settle and his eyes adjust to the darkness. On the mat in the corner, Jocko's quilt lay rumpled. A candle flickered on a small table. On the shelves, Jocko's little dolls, everywhere, as they had always been. On the wall across from the mat, above a shelf of dolls, shadows moved in a patch of blue light. Must be the moonlight moving through the magic lantern. He watched as the patterns shifted. For a while they soothed him and conjured up the sweetness of unseen memories. But the forms began to take shapes, and in his heart he felt a constriction, some kind of barrier to the flow of waves, a longing perhaps. Yes, a longing. Fiddle tunes, orange robes, horses, the ocean, the curve of a face, like the bowl of the night sky. 2 bright stars, eyes, wind-blown leaves, a formation of birds encircling a globe, arms, water flowing over hills, hair, shoulders, a mouth, a voice. "Hello, Johnny." Her image was like a reflection in a pool, distorted by ripples. His heart broke, and salty seawater flooded his body. "Lucy!" The image breathed. Her chest heaved. A tress of black hair fell across her cheek. "Johnny, can you see me?" Johnny flung himself at the wall, knocking the dolls off the shelf, but immediately his shadow blocked the image and obscured it in darkness. He reached out his hand, but all he felt was the plaster of the bare wall. He fell back on the floor, and she returned slowly, like a reflection returns after the troubling of the water. "Lucy, I can see you, but I can't feel you. Can you see me?" I can't see you or feel you. We haven't worked that out yet. I can only hear you." What do you mean, we? Who has done this?" Bow Wow and Frankie. Bow Wow told Frankie, "You can't just use machines. You have to move the dough." "Johnny, What do I look like? Johnny stood back and looked into her face. Your hair. You cut off your beautiful hair. The black coats did it. It was long ago. I'm growing it back. Johnny drank in the image. It shifted and shimmered and frequently threatened to disappear entirely. It was Lucy, but it was not Lucy. He couldn't tell what she was wearing. The movement of her lips was not in time with the sound of her words. Where are you? In Freeland. We got away. All of us. You saved us. All of us. When you killed that man. Freeland? Tears swelled in Johnny's eyes. I want to go back. I want to be there with you. Lucy. Lucy, I love you. The longing in his arms was unbearable. If only he could throw them around her. She wasn't there. She was far away. He couldn't touch her. She was so far away. I love you too, Johnny, she said, but her voice sounded empty and sad. I love you so much, but things are different now. Different? Lucy didn't say anything for a while. She kept her eyes down so that Johnny could only see the lids. Finally, she looked up. Johnny, you have a son. You've already met him. She turned her face to the side. Come, Timothy, say hello. The boy appeared, a blurred shadow, shy, fearful. He didn't seem to know where to rest his eyes. He can see you, Lucy told him, even if you can't see him. Say hello. Hello. Johnny Arcane is your papa. You can call him Papa. Hello, Papa. Welcome home. Meet me on the bridge. The Lover's Knot. Safe at anchor. Johnny's eyes overflowed. These were the names of the roses in the garden at Freeland. The memory was clear and vivid, clearer than the moving picture before him. Bow Wow reading the placards, the boy repeating the words in his high and wistful voice, and then suddenly, Mother's voice, weak and straining. Death shouldn't bother you if you've planted a seed. Lucy, Lucy, wait for me. I'll come back to Freeland. We can be together. We can raise him together. We can be a family. Lucy was crying openly now. He heard her sobs, but the teardrops were nothing but smudges on the grainy screen. She kept her head up and shook it slowly from side to side. Johnny, I can't. She stopped. Her body became still. She took a deep breath. I'm married now. There was a popping sound. The image jumped and began to fade. Johnny felt like he was falling into an abyss. His stomach flipped and a volley of sparks crackled through his head. Married? His name is Eric. He was a black coat. He escaped when you killed Glass Darkly. He helped me get to Freeland. Bow Wow took him in. Bow Wow says we can never be together, you and me. It isn't our destiny. Eric is kind. He takes good care of me. In the distortion, there was a sound like the fluttering of a bird's wing. Then Lucy's voice again, jumping and jerking. He isn't you, Johnny. You're the one I love. I'll always love you, Johnny. A jagged line ripped across the screen, followed by a harsh, stuttering noise. Lucy's voice shattered into fragments. A burst of light, a crack of sound, and then darkness, silence, save for the guttering of the candle and the distant clamor of agitated voices in the long hall. A thumping sound, and the door flew open. Johnny turned. Frankie stood there, leaning on his crutch. His voice was uncommonly subdued. I'm so sorry, Johnny. We don't have enough power to sustain it for very long. There was a pause, like a momentary halt on the wheel of time, like a breath held, inhaled, holding, like a fist clamped around a great heart to prevent its next beat. Then there was a commotion at the door. Bearclaw burst in. Johnny, he cried. Johnny, I'm sorry. You have to come. We need you. They're going crazy out there. It's getting dangerous. They want the band. We have to play.